Today, I'd like to welcome a guest known to me for a very long time. His name is Gije, and he has been through a mental health tsunami, as I'd like to put it, for 4 years. He's chosen to share his story with us because he went through another traumatic incident where he lost a very dear friend of his to suicide, who had gone through the similar circumstances and situations which Gige was in as well. And unfortunately, he didn't know how to help his friend at that time. The purpose of this podcast, in Gige's words, are that even if he can help one person through this podcast, and one person knows what to do or how to identify a family member or friend going through mental health issues, that's all he wants. So, hi, Gige.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on this podcast and be open to sharing what you've gone through mentally. I know it's very difficult for you because it was a 4 year long process. We'll start from the beginning, like how it started. Feel free to add or say whatever you're comfortable with expressing.
Sure.
So, what you were doing initially before you started facing any of these issues? How was your life before that?
Well, it was doing actually pretty well. I was working in France for the first time. I was having my own apartment. I was feeling well in my company, seeing my friends, cooking, which is quite important for me. So I had a good balance in life between my professional life and personal life, and I was quite happy with it.
Okay. And would you describe yourself as an outgoing person before, like to socialize and do things and meet people?
Very much, very much.
Okay. Now let's go to the part when you noticed that, or maybe you didn't notice, but people noticed that your mental health was getting affected in
Degrading.
some way. You mentioned that it was in August 2018 was when you first wrote it on that piece of paper.
Yes, absolutely. But it's something that I have noticed afterwards that
Yeah.
the so I was feeling very well in my life. I had a very good balance professionally and personally, but there had been troubles in my life that I had not solved. I had not discussed about it. This being that I was supposed to go through Africa on the bicycle. I was with a girlfriend with whom I love very much, and I wanted to actually try something with her. And both didn't work out. And I think I did not stop enough on these two particular moments of my life and reflect on it. And so it just caught me off guard a few years later.
So you think that these are the two main incidents that happened in your life which caused it. So what we see here is that there may be always one or two main causes which start leading to mental health downfall, would you say?
Actually, I have identified about 12 or 15 things that have made me go through this crisis. Some of
Okay.
them are internal for me, meaning that I could reproduce them now, and some of them are external. This being not being able to go on a trip that I had been planning for years, stopping a relationship with a person, and I had to also cope with COVID-19 and the confinement, as almost everyone on Earth.
Okay. So do you think that these three things coming together at the same time caused that bigger impact because they came together,
Definitely,
yeah, at
yeah.
the same time?
Yeah, as they came together, I had not solved them, and so
Yeah.
small problem just starting being a large one, where I would have been able to cope with it in a standard situation.
Okay. So, do you think that if you consciously, if you knew that this is going to happen to you, would you be able to take precautionary steps before it happened? If you could kind of see the future and say that this could happen to me, do you think there are precautionary steps that you could have taken to avoid it?
Yes, probably. One of them would have been to identify that I am not a very susceptible person, so I can take a lot from what people tell me. I don't have a tendency to anger, but this is the two things that started on the first few weeks that I was understanding that I was in a different state of mind, but I was unable to identify it. I think it's very easy 2 years, 4 years later, actually, to say what I should have done. But when you're on the moment, particularly because I was alone because of the confinement, then it's very difficult for one to understand that he's going through a psychiatric crisis and to identify the small changes, because they are very small at the beginning, that will lead to larger changes and eventually a psychotic crisis.
Okay, that's actually an important point to note, that these things start off very small, and
Yeah,
at times you don't even realize what's going on because it doesn't have such a big, you just feel that, oh, I'm feeling low today or tired, and you don't know what's going on. So you can't really make any changes in that moment.
absolutely.
Okay. Now, when you started noticing that like there are some changes and you're mentally feeling a certain way, what are the physical changes that you noticed in yourself, say sleep or physical activity? What were the changes that you noticed in yourself?
So first of all, I don't sleep much. I don't need much sleep. I sleep about 6 hours per night, which is completely enough and fine for me. However, that means that I'm never in credit when it comes to sleeping. So if I start sleeping less and less over a longer period of time, I'm going to build up a depth in sleep, which is going to be eventually dangerous for me. That I had not identified, and that is for me the main reason that lead, the physical reason that lead to that psychotic crisis, is that I went from sleeping 6 hours on a regular basis to 4, 5, 3, and eventually a bit less than 3 hours per night over the last 7 days before the psychotic crisis.
Okay. So was it like a few consecutive days and then you got 2 to 3 hours of sleep on those nights?
Yes, it's like I reduced drastically my sleep timing
Yes.
over 2 weeks. The first week it just went down a little bit, so it was very difficult to notice it when you're sleeping 6 hours. If it goes down to 5:30, it's not actually a big problem. However, if you do it over a long period of time, your
Yes.
brain is going to be lacking a lot of energy
Yes. Yeah. So
and
that's
recovery.
why. Why do you feel that you couldn't sleep at night?
Because of the thoughts, basically. So I was in a very, very high level of energy because my brain was over producing molecules that make me asleep and give me energy. So I would go to sleep, start thinking, and have my brain giving me some ideas. I would try to sleep. It wouldn't work. I would wake up again, go and start writing all my ideas, or call people, or watch something about it.
Okay. So post that, you spoke about an incident that happened. It's called acute delirious outburst, which you wrote about, that took place on the 30th of May 2020. So I wanted to tell me a bit about that incident where you thought the programmers were hacking into all your devices. And also you said you had the support of two of your friends all this while. So can you tell me a little bit about that incident?
Um, So I would say that the peak of what happened to me is when the actual psychotic crisis started. So the psychotic crisis is when you have you're going to see the reality in a different way than it actually is, and you're unable at the time to criticize it and notice it. You will feel it at some point because when you interact with others, you notice that their behavior is different, so it makes you even more uncomfortable. But basically, over the two previous weeks, I had deprived my brain of sleep to a very dangerous point. So my brain was going on self-defense mode while I was awake, meaning that it would switch off for a few seconds without me noticing. So I was basically asleep, but it would fill the blank with something that made sense with what was happening before. So most of the time, if you're talking in a normal conversation, people would not even notice it. But when you're on a business meeting on a very specific topic that is technical, sometimes you lose 2 or 3 seconds and you're completely lost in the meeting.
Can you give me an example, like say this business meeting, so when it switches off, what would it look like to someone watching you? Would they know?
I have no idea. I don't think so, because I think my eyes would not close. I think it would just my brain going on self-defense mode for a few seconds. And as I said, I think most of the time people would not notice because my brain would fill the blank with something that made sense with something with what happened before.
Okay.
But at some moment it did not, and I had noticed in some meetings that I was the center of the attention of everybody, and it made me very uncomfortable because what I was saying made sense with what my brain had showed me, but what my brain had showed me did not happen in reality.
You said this happened for 3 or 4 seconds, but now when
I
it
think
comes
so.
to say delusions or hallucinating, something which is usually a longer period of time. So can you tell us a bit about how that affected you, and or give an incident about any time you faced that?
Well, for example, when I had the actual crisis, I left my place to go to my friends. And on the way to my friends, all the traffic lights were green, which is impossible because not all the traffic lights can be green, otherwise there would be accidents. So despite me knowing that it's impossible, I would still see it with my own eyes. And I was unable, and I think it's very difficult to be able to identify that you're actually hallucinating, because it's not like you're seeing things that don't exist, or something that is just going to show you that you're hallucinating. You're just seeing a different version of reality that fits with what's happening in your brain. So it's just going to confirm your ideas and the delirium you're already into.
And what about the part where you said you took off your watch and then you left it in the letterbox because you felt that the programmer could follow you there to your friend's house? And so you turned off all the electronic devices in your own house and left for your friend's house and then went back to do this.
Yeah, so basically, the idea of such a crisis is that you're going to go into a parallel reality. I woke up very late at night, and I didn't want to bother people because it was 1 o'clock. I had been bothering them already very much for the past 2 weeks. I was having an anxiety crisis, and so I decided to smoke in order to calm me down and to be able to play video games for a few hours until the morning to start my day. The problem is that I don't smoke large quantities. So if I start doing larger quantities, it's going to have a much higher effect on my brain. Plus, it had been 1 week I had not been sleeping. We are talking 10 hours of sleep, 14 hours of sleep over 7 days. So it just had a massive effect on my perception of reality. I knew that in my company, some people knew that I needed to sleep and I needed to unplug from work. I was unable to switch on my TV and my Xbox on which I wanted to play. And so the logical explanation was that someone who was very good with programming was able to stop me from switching off on my devices. Since I was working in an IT company, it made very much sense as well that it was someone from the company who had some idea of my psychological state, who was trying to help out. So that's when you start being in your parallel reality, and then everything you're going to be doing is just going to be confirming what you're thinking, meaning that I had the feeling that they were watching me over cameras.
Mm.
I switched off everything, left my place in the middle of the forced confinement, arrived to my friend's place, and my watch, which was a Garmin at the time, vibrated. It just vibrated because I had done this many steps during the day.
Mm.
But to me, it was completely correlated with the fact that, linked with the fact that my programmer had been able, through the Wi-Fi of my watch, to penetrate this item as well. And so I was still carrying an item which was letting me know exactly where I was.
And in reality, what happened? Why did your Xbox not switch on? Do you know now when you reflect back? You don't have an answer to that. But
I it might actually have switched on, but I wasn't able to see it. Since
okay.
about 20 minutes after I was seeing all the traffic lights in green, I have
Yeah.
no idea what was an hallucination and what wasn't.
Yes. And also you said at one point you switched off your Wi-Fi and you didn't know that you had done it, right? And you thought that they did it?
No, 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 no. I don't remember this part. My parents told me that when they got into the flat, I had unplugged every single electronical item in the apartment.
Okay.
So it probably made sense, since I was so worried about being spied on by a programmer. It just made sense to unplug everything that was connected to electrical current to not be connected with the programmer.
Okay. Now you say your parents came into your apartment and your friends knew about it. So at that point, what was the reaction of your family, your friends, your colleagues? How did they react to how, like, what you were doing?
Um, First of all, I think they would be very happy to answer to your question if you want to. What I remember, I was feeling some tensions in the relationships, some the fact that they were worried, but since it had happened over a long period of time, gradually getting more and more difficult, I think it was very difficult to feel the change at the beginning.
Mm.
And once they could feel it, because we were in the first confinement and they were not with me, once they could feel it, it was already too late. Because when you started going up,
Yeah.
at some point you're just going to be rocketing to the top. However, two of my friends visited me during the first confinement. After about a month, let's say 5 weeks,
Mm.
and they entered my place. No, over 6 weeks actually. They entered my place, which was not cleaned because I was a bit blocked into this physical apartment and the stuff I needed to do and the stuff I was thinking as well. And it was and it is still a very good friend with whom I have no problem communicating. And I can remember the difficulty of communication with him and
Mm.
how I was talking about something and I felt that he was talking about something else, but he was still referring to me, and that his girlfriend who was with him was feeling very uncomfortable, obviously, about the situation, feeling probably the pain that she was feeling and her boyfriend as well.
Okay. Now, during this period of time, at any point, were you able to sleep longer hours during the night? Say, were you able to get around 5 or 6 hours of sleep anytime?
The, yes, the night before the actual crisis, I actually went to sleep at 6 o'clock. The original plan was to have a quick nap, but I was so deprived of sleep that I just went from 6 p.m. to, I don't exactly know, but from the text and phone calls, I would say between 12 and 1 or 2 a.m.
Okay. And then you felt after that long sleep, but still your brain has got rewired a bit because you've not slept well. So even though you had that long sleep on that particular day, that didn't help you from, or didn't undo what your brain had already gone through over the past few weeks.
No, definitely not. I think I was already in such a deprived state of sleep that 6 hours were just not enough at all to recover from the past 2 weeks.
Okay. And now, how would you describe yourself changing physically at that time?
In a perfect condition, actually. During the first confinement, I was working out about 1 hour to 2 hours per day. I was weighing 95 kgs, only muscles. And why am I saying that? Because my sister, who saw me on videos, actually noticed my body change in a very positive way on camera, which I
So,
think is very hard to do. But what you're referring to is after my depression,
yeah, after the,
during over two, yeah, during the after the actual crisis,
yeah,
during 2 years, I had to live through a depression, and during these 2 years, I was sleeping about 20 hours a day, waking up only to eat junk food because I was unable to cook and to take care of myself. And so I went from 90 kgs going out of the hospital up to 120 kgs.
okay, so this is post when you came out of the hospital, two hospitals, right? So
Absolutely, yeah.
okay, so let's talk a bit about that, like the first time you uh, went to the psychiatric hospital. So tell me, who had you go to the hospital and how did you end up over there?
So it's not one person, it's a few people. First, the two friends I mentioned about before, I came to visit them in the middle of the night after during actually my psychotic crisis. Um, she has a mother who is psychiatric, so they had been counseled over the past 2 weeks on how to deal with me, um, how to help me without being with me. So I think they were very much aware of me being in a psychiatric psychosis crisis. And they were also very much aware that they would not be able to solve the problem for me. So they sought help
Yeah.
from other people who were living nearby. They called my mom. My mom requested one of our other friends, who's a nurse, whom she knows very well, to come and pick me up to bring me to the hospital. But I didn't want to go to the hospital. So it's only after I heard my mom cry over the phone to tell me that I had to trust the people and I was in good hands that I accepted to be brought to the hospital. And even after that, I negotiated with the person who was bringing me to the hospital, telling her that I had no problem. I needed to clean my flat for it to be clean for my parents, etc., etc. I was still unable to understand that I was in very much need of help.
Okay. And tell me about your experience there. They had to tie you, or did you mention that, or was that, or what, did you imagine that?
No, no, I didn't imagine it. But so basically, on a psychiatric bed for emergency, you have links to attach the person whom you're bringing to the hospital to protect the people who are carrying him, but also to protect the person because sometimes you're a danger to yourself. I did not need to be attached because I have not a violent personality. However, my dad had told me a few days before that I needed to learn to say no to people. So I reacted in the exact opposite, and I was saying yes to everything I was proposed to. So when the emergency team arrived, they had the bed, they had the link. They asked me, do we need or do you want to be attached? Probably need. And I answered yes, because in my mind, I was just like, I'm going to live the full experience.
Okay. So that's why you were attached. And then once you got into the room, because I remember you saying there are two hospitals. The first one was not so nice, and the second one was better. And the first hospital, you were one of the youngest patients over there. So,
Absolutely.
so did you have your own room there? Did you share your room with someone, others? How was that?
Um, So I don't think it's the same in the second hospital, but in the first hospital I came in, when you come in, you're into a specific room where you're alone, because you're in the highest point of your personal crisis. So you need some space. After I don't know how many days, I was put in another room with someone else, and we were two in the room. But the building was old, the furniture were old, everything was a bit not what you can imagine when you're talking about a psychiatric hospital, but we are still talking about a building that when you enter, you're not feeling well. Even
Yes.
if you take out all the patients, even if you take out all the doctors, and this is just another building which has not been refurbished, refurnished, or renewed for I have no idea how many years, but it's a few years.
Okay. So would you feel, can you relate that experience to yourself being in a prison? Would you feel like that?
Yes, definitely. Because first of all, when I arrived, I did not think I was in an hospital. I was absolutely persuaded to be in like a social experiment from organized by the friend of my mother, who put into one public place a lot of people to help me understand that I was having a problem.
Okay.
And but because you're in a psychiatric hospital and you're not supposed to leave, obviously, every doors are locked, every windows are locked, and so you're actually unable to go outside of the perimeter that you're allowed to, and so you actually feel that you're being imprisoned. However, all the nurses and doctors were making me feel at the same time extremely good because they were taking care of us, and at the same time it was very oppressing because you feel that you're overwatched all the time. And also, we are during the first confinement of COVID, and the rule of this hospital is that we had to wear a mask at all time.
Okay. And then you didn't have, so because the windows and all of it was closed, did you have any periods during the day where you could get fresh air, where some of them would take you out? There were periods like that?
Yeah, we actually had like a small garden
Yeah.
uh, to which we could go, not all day. Let's say because I was waking up very early, and I remember that it was closed in the morning. But I think it would open just before breakfast and closed probably right after dinner. So from 8 or 9 something. I don't remember the precise hour.
But you could go at any time to the garden, or what was?
Yeah. It was like I guess someone was watching from afar,
Yeah.
but at any time I could decide to go outside. The problem is that since we were during COVID, in a psychiatric hospital, you have activities that are being done by the nurses, but most activities are being done by people who are from outside the hospital. They are not from the
Okay.
healing team.
Yes.
And so these people were unable to come to the hospital because of all the rules, etc. And so we had absolutely zero activity during the day.
Okay, so that must have been hard. You all didn't have any activities amongst yourselves, like organized by the hospital, one or two, nothing at all.
Nothing at all, just a doctor's meeting. So you're always in your own thoughts, which
Yes.
is not very nice. And
Hmm.
you're always looking forward to leaving this place. And you're getting your doctor's meeting at periods that seem to be extremely long when you're in that state. And so you're always in the need of seeing the doctor, being able to leave. You want to know when you can leave. You want to know what you have. You want to know what are going to be the consequences.
Okay. Would you do? What would your typical day look like in that hospital?
Alors, first of all, I don't remember exactly the first 3 or 4 days, I would say. I have some blinks. I have some memories. I don't know if I put them in the right order. I've been helped over years by the people who have seen me, but I am not in contact much with any people from this first hospital, so I'm unable to precisely tell you for these first few days, actually. But for the rest of the days, I remember very clearly waking up extremely early, between 4 and 6 a.m. I would put my headphones on, listen to podcasts and music, and smoke in the corridors. Basically, the rooms were like doing corridor circles. So I would just wake up, put my headphones on, walk around, and listen to music and podcasts. Then around let's 8 or 9 a.m. was the breakfast, so everybody would be awake. I would eat by myself or with other people, depending on the day. And then it must have been probably the same thing. I would just be exchanging and talking with the people who were outside of their rooms. But if people are inside of their rooms, you're just unable to do anything. But I remember very clearly talking with a woman on the grass who was drawing. I remember very clearly having a very long exchange with a migrant from Africa who wanted to know a bit more about my spirituality. And that's the two main moments I remember of. And having the visit of my parents once and my dad once, but I don't remember the visit of my dad.
Okay. So these are some of the incidents which you have a clear memory about.
Yeah.
Then there is one incident which you spoke about that I take some patients for psychiatrists. Now it's translated, so I hope it's correct. And then you said in particular a woman with whom I draw in the sun. Okay, she takes out drawings of dresses and asks me who they remind me of. So can you tell me a little bit more about this exchange with this particular lady and then what happens at the end of it in that para?
So basically, at that moment of time, I'm still not 100% sure that I'm in a psychiatric hospital. So I take the patients for psychiatrist. And this woman in particular, she was very nice toward me. We had exchanged a lot about my personal life, and she's outside on a table drawing. I like drawing, so I go with her. She gives me a page of paper, and I start drawing. And this is a methodology that is used by psychologists and psychiatrists during meetings. So to me, it just confirmed the fact that she was from the caring team of the place I was in, which was still not an hospital for me. And I don't know why she had so many drawings of robes and dresses. And so she hands me one and she's like, what does it make you think of? And the name of one of my ex-girlfriends comes out. And she asked me, is it over in your head? Do you have any trouble with this past relationship? And I'm like, no, but it just refers to her style, so it makes me think of her. So she's like, okay, no problem. Takes the paper, puts it back in her stuff. Then she comes out with another paper. Whom does it make you think of? This person. Do you think of her? No. Is it a problem? No. Okay, we take it off. And then there is this one dress who is making me think of my ex-girlfriend of the time, whom I had broke up with about a year ago, and he had not reflected enough on that breakup, and he had not healed from it. And so she's like, is it still a problem? And I'm like, yes. And so she asked me why, and I'm like, I don't actually know, but my drawing is about it. Our name was written on it. And so our breakup was one of the main thing that made me go crazy. But it's not the breakup, the actual breakup. It's the fact that after the breakup, I did not do the work to heal from that experience of my life. And so I don't remember exactly the exchange, but we discussed about it. She probably gave me some advices, and so it confirmed, in my point of view, that she was from the caring team. And it's only 2 or 3 days after, when I saw her banging her head on the wall because the caring team didn't want to let her do something, like in a very, very violent way, that I noticed that she was probably not a psychiatrist. And it actually made me come back to reality and accept the fact that I had a psychosis crisis. I was unable to understand what reality was, and I was also unable to criticize my own thinking.
Okay, so that's actually a really powerful incident, I think, where you also see that even people who are going through their own mental traumas have their, their days where they are of normalcy, I'll put it that way, where you could actually think of a patient as a doctor. And that's something, I mean, which I wouldn't have imagined that you would, that for at least 2 or 3 days, she was behaving in a way where someone would mistake her to be a psychiatrist or from the caring team, right? And
Yeah.
so after that, it was kind of a reality check for you. Did you feel that this incident then, brought you to reality and made you start working on yourself more?
Yes, definitely. First of all, when you're blocked into a parallel reality, it's very difficult to see these signs that are going to show you that you're on the wrong track, that you're not seeing the reality. But some signs, like someone banging very violently
Hmm.
her head on the wall, are too strong for your subconscious to just make something out of it to confirm your on views. And so yeah, that's when I understood that the people whom I was seeing in separate rooms were actual doctors, that I was in an actual hospital, that the patients whom I was evolving had their own psychological or psychiatric troubles, and then I actually needed help. And that's when I think I changed my. That's basically what the doctor said, is that the crisis was extremely short.
Hmm.
It took I think 3 or 4 days for me to start criticizing what I had lived. But during these 3 or 4 days, it's I think almost impossible for someone who is outside of the psychiatric team, and maybe even for them, to know if I'm going to be able to get out of that state, because what I had lived can lead to psychiatric troubles that last for lives. Whereas the doctors, for me, very quickly said that it was, they call it a thunderstorm into a bright sky,
Hmm.
meaning that it's something that happens at a very specific point in your life, has no consequences on a psychiatric level on the rest of your life, and you are not going to be bipolar or anything psychiatrically related.
Okay, so it won't relapse. Is that what they meant?
No, but it can,
Yeah.
because it has happened once, as it can to every single person on earth, but you're not going to be in a cycle of it recoming over and over at a period of time, because your brain is just plugged differently.
Okay. So you feel that people, as in what from what the doctors have said, there are people who say are much further along, say this lady who we were talking about, and their psychiatric treatment could last for life. They have to keep going and
Absolutely.
visiting
I'm
doctors.
100% sure, and one of my best friends has lived the exact same thing. So we are not the same individuals. We don't
Yeah.
have the same backgrounds. We obviously don't have the same bodies and biological
Hmm.
patrimony. However, he lived the exact same thing when we were in China. And from 2017 until 2023, when he committed suicide, he
Hmm.
just kept coming up over and over and over in sometimes very difficult moments where I had to be in an hospital, in sometimes softer moments. But
Hmm.
it's like you, even when you're well, you're living with this sword on top of your head, and you don't know when it's going to come down. So even when you're well, you don't feel well, because you're scared and you don't know when it's going to not be well. And when
Yeah.
you're not well, obviously, well, you're just not well.
Okay. And then did this friend of yours, like you, because in 2017 you hadn't faced any crisis yet, but you have seen him going through that since 2017. So kind of along your way, not in the moment, but when you were recovering, you could still look back on the patterns that went on with your friend and compare it
Absolutely.
to, could you compare
They
it?
are
Yeah.
absolutely, they are exactly the same.
Yeah.
They are
Okay.
exactly the same. It starts with an increase of your brain activity,
Hmm.
which is at the same time extremely cool because since you're sleeping less and since your brain has a very high activity, you're very productive. You're able to do a lot of work, a lot of writing for my side, or video editing if you like video editing, or music or whatever, and you're very very creative.
Hmm.
But then your brain gets tired, and then you start seeing reality not as it is,
Yeah.
and um, and eventually, if nobody unplugs you,
Yeah.
you just start just exploding in the middle of everything.
Okay. Now, what happened? You moved to a second hospital. Why did that happen? Why did you shift from this one?
Because in France, psychiatric hospitals are sectorized,
Yeah.
meaning that. So I was at my parents during confinement because I had a large flat with a large balcony, and it was very nice for me to be there. Whereas
Mm.
my flat was much less nice, let's say. So I was at their place, and so the hospital I was brought to was linked to their place. Then, when I started coming out of my delirium,
Yeah.
I probably told them, or they noticed in the back office that I was not supposed to be in that hospital. So they moved me to another hospital, which was closer to my place. And also, next to my place was the follow up team once I come out of the hospital.
Okay. So it was convenient. And do you feel that this hospital, because you said it was much better, it was more cheerful, so that must have had a better impact on you or speeded up the process of your recovery?
Probably, but also I just came down and came out of my crisis, so I was just in a better mood, in a better state to welcome the treatment first of all, but also to feel better over life. So it's also my own view on reality that became much more positive.
Okay. And which year was this in now? Which you were moved?
Uh, 2020,
So this is 2020. So we've come from 2018, 19, and now you're in
2020.
2020. And on right now, where would you put yourself on the scale of your mental health at this point?
As of today,
No, on 2020 when you were moved to
ah,
the new hospital.
um, so I already had understood that I had gone through a psychiatric crisis. I
Yeah.
understood that I needed help. I understood that the doctors were not trying to drug me or make me feel worse.
Mm.
So I was in an actual good state. Um, I was able to. I was not sleeping well still, but I was still sleeping enough for me to let my brain recover. I think I was in a much better. If you compare it to the 200% I was on about a week ago.
Yeah.
Let's say I was still at a high level, but 120% of brain energy.
Mm.
And so I was in a much better psychiatric state.
Okay. So here you're recovering. Now in this hospital, did you have activities, people coming from outside and helping? Still not there because of COVID.
You're still during the COVID-19, the
Mm.
first pandemic. And so no. But something that was very good is that my previous hospital, people could visit, but we had to wear masks 24
Okay.
hours 7. Well, not while we were sleeping. Whereas the second hospital, people were unable to visit,
Mm.
but we didn't have to wear masks. However, the outside of this hospital, there was a wall that was linked with the outside, and so people from outside could come and discuss with us from outside the hospital, which happened once or twice with my parents.
Okay, so then you felt more connected to the real world when you were in this, and especially it must have been comforting to know that your parents were close by and you could see them. And you also mentioned your parents mentioned visited you once. Was it in this hospital? And you have no recollection of your dad coming and visiting?
On the first hospital, my parents. So first of all, when my parents came back from south of France, which is
Yes,
about 1,200 kilometers away from where I was hospitalized, um, I did not believe them.
you didn't believe that they had come to see you.
Yes, no, that they had come back to north of France
Okay, you
because
didn't.
we were in the first confinement.
Yes.
They were not allowed to do that. Well, at least I thought so. So I thought they were just saying that. I don't remember exactly what, but I was very suspicious, and to the point that I actually made experiments. My mom writes a lot, so she wrote me
Yeah.
letters. I was making experiments on it to know if it had been printed or written by hand.
Okay. Okay.
And they visited on the first day. They gave me some of my stuff that I forgot. Well, I didn't take, obviously. I do not recall anyone giving me that. They gave me 10 packs of cigarettes on the second day.
Hmm.
On the third day, I had zero cigarettes. I pretty much know what happened is that people must have given me cigarettes on the first day. So I reimbursed cigarettes with a full pack for each and every of them. And and then they visited me, and then I understood. After only the crisis was over, after I had seen this woman bang her head on the wall, after I had understood I was in a bad mental state and I needed help, after I had understood what was reality, then they visited me. But it was very hard for them because on the first 3 days I was on a loop of you need to get me out of this hospital. You're my parents. I feel like I'm in prison. The
Hmm.
doctor said I can come out. Please come and pick me up.
And you started it's just, telling a few stories in between to get you out, right?
Yeah,
Saying,
lies,
yeah. So
straight up lies.
what would one example be of how you try to get out?
But very simple. My father. So first, I think I was the one calling outside.
Yeah.
The first day, I didn't have my cell phone because I had let it at home, obviously. So I had to use the phone of the hospital. So I had to ask the team to dial up the number for me. Then I would go to another place to pick up the phone and to talk to the person. And I
Hmm.
remember very clearly calling my dad and saying, well, very clearly, somewhat clearly, calling my dad, and he asked me how am I going, and I was telling him very well, no problem. I just talked to the doctor. He said I can be freed, and you can come and pick me up anytime.
Hmm.
And I did that to my dad because he has never been into working into an hospital. I did not do it to my mom because my mom is a nurse, so she knew. So my dad just said, "Oh yes, okay, super cool. I'm super happy. I'll come and pick you up soon."
Hmm.
Hang up the phone. My mom looks at him and she's like, "He's probably lying." And my dad was like, "No, no, no. He said he saw the doctor, etc." And she was like, "Call the nurses,
Hmm.
ask them out." And they called the nurses, and they were like, "Obviously not. He's staying." And so I kept going from lies to telling them that they were my parents and they needed to pick me up because I was not feeling well. I did the same thing to the friend I went to during the night a few days back. I was calling him and he was like, "I'm sorry, bro, I can't come and pick you up. I'm not your family." And I was like, I remember very clearly telling him, "No, but it's okay. You're considered as family. You're a very good friend. Don't worry."
Hmm. So you were aware enough that time to come up with these things, and it also must be that you were really desperate to get out of there. So both these things combined was making you react in this way and tell those lies. So now we're coming back to the second hospital and towards the end of your time there. How did you see yourself recovering? Think of the last few days that you spent over there. How was it?
Very good. I actually have a very good had a very good experience in that hospital. The main reason being I was feeling much better, obviously. The second reason is that in the first hospital I was the youngest almost, so people were taking care of me.
Hmm.
Whereas in the second hospital I was a little bit older than most people, so I was taking care of them
Okay.
with Braca still. Um, Also, the place was a little bit better. I had my own room, which was nice to have some privacy. I had made some friends. Um, there was only one thing that stressed me out very much the few days before leaving is that the doctor had told me I could leave the hospital at, I don't remember exactly what date,
Hmm.
but my mom kept telling me to be cool about it, that because of the product they had given me at the emergency room 2 weeks ago, he might have to prolong my stay in the hospital of maybe 1, 2 days. So it was like I knew it was the end. I knew I
Yes.
was coming out, and at the same time, I had to be like, until you're out, you don't
Hmm.
know if you're out.
That uncertainty. And especially, I think because COVID was still around then, so all of it added to more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now we'll get to the part where you're out. And when you were out, did you think that, okay, this is all behind me, it's a thing of the past? Did you have that kind of a feeling when you stepped out of the hospital?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
First of all, you're filled with joy because you are able to hug your parents that you have not touched for almost 10 days.
Yes.
You're outside, you're free of your movements. You can do whatever you want. Well, somewhat because you're still in the beginning of the COVID-19. But I felt the profound joy to be actually free, basically. Um, I was feeling very well. I had still a higher brain activity than normal, but nothing to be worried about. And I had understood that I needed to take the meds in order for my brain to heal and to recover from what happened in the past few weeks. And then they took me in south of France,
Yes.
where they have a house. So I was always outside, taking the sun or in the pool, and it was like a perfect place for recovering from all that.
So how long were you in both these hospitals for?
15 days.
Feel like 15 days, or did it feel like much longer?
The first part of it in the first hospital felt much longer because I have a big problem with someone reducing my freedom. Uh, so it was very difficult for me. Second of all, I was still in my crisis, so I was unable to understand why my freedom was being reduced forcefully.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say the first week was extremely long. It felt much more than that. And the second week, much less because I had the good social interaction with people. I was just discussing with people 8 hours a day,
Okay.
excluding the doctors.
Okay. And you feel that it did make a difference in your recovery?
Oh, absolutely, because I'm a very social person. I need people. I
Yes.
need to interact with people, and it's absolutely necessary for my health.
Okay. So now you're out of the hospital and you mentioned that you eventually get a job, right?
Wow, 1 year later.
So 1 year. So what was
Oh
the,
no, wait! I come back to my company because I was working for a company.
yeah, the previous
I
company?
st- I I stopped abruptly. They have no idea why,
Yeah.
because obviously I didn't call them. Um, I go to the hospital for 2 weeks. I go in south of France for June, July, August.
Hmm.
August, I decide, okay, I'm very well. I need to go back to work. Anyway, I love my company. I love my job. I go back to work. And the day I leave, no, 1 week before I leave my house in south of France, I start feeling low. Low meaning that I sleep a little bit more. I have much less energy. I'm I have less wants in my days, but I don't really know what's going on, and I go from south of France up to north of France and start working again in the same company as before.
Okay. And then now let's go to the part where you say that then you had depression, and what depression did you have, and can you explain that a bit?
Yes, it's quite simple. Is that when you're experiencing what I have experienced, your brain goes at a very, very high level of energy. Let's say 200%. Your medical team are going to bring you down to 100%, which is your natural state. So you're doing it medically. You're being forced to do it, which is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you're just going to die. But your brain may, not in 100% of the case, but in many cases, is going to readjust from 200% to the 100% to the natural states of yours. But since you've already done it medically a few months before, when your brain starts doing it, it brings you gradually from 100 to 90, 80, 70, and eventually 0%.
Okay.
To the point that I was sleeping. So in a depression, the common point of any depression is that you have sleep troubles. In my experience, it was sleeping 20 hours a day, and you could just put me in a sofa, leave me there for 16 hours watching the wall, and it would be absolutely no problem for me.
Okay. So at this point, where were you?
I started working again with my company, and so I just did 1 day in the company. I came out of the company, burst out of cry in my car for about 30 minutes, called my parents. I had been warned before starting working again that it was too early. I did not listen to that. And so I just went to my doctors again, explained the situation, and he was like, okay, you need to go to see a psychiatrist. You need to get meds in order to help you out throughout the depression that you're going to experience. And so I did that.
And then did you feel, did you feel a bit of fear because you felt that you've come out of it, you've been in that, and then scared that you will relapse? Was that on your mind?
Not relapse, because the doctors had been very clear about that, and I was not in the same state at all. But I had experienced something very hard. It took me about 3 or 4 months to recover from it. Then, right after that, you go down into something else that is very, very, very difficult to live, particularly for someone like me who has a very high level of energy and does a lot of things over the day.
Yes.
So you're like again in something that you don't know and you have never experienced. And also the psychiatric who was following me in the daycare that I was supposed to go every 2 weeks. She told me it's okay, it's no problem. You have a post-traumatic depression. I'm just going to give you these meds. You're going to take them. And she forgot, or I forgot that she told me, I had no problem taking my meds from the hospital because they told me you're going to take them for 1 year.
Okay.
So it was set in time. Obviously, we would confirm after 1 year that I did not need them, but still in my mind, it was like, this meds does that, and you're going to take it for this long. So it was very clear. Whereas for the antidepressant, she just gave it to me, and I was like, so I don't know what it does, and I have no idea how long I'm going to take that. So it was much difficult for me to take these meds than the others.
And then you stopped taking the meds in between, right? For some time?
So because I was unable to experience joy at any point of the day, and I had stopped the meds from the hospital, so it was 1 year after the hospital, I decided that I'm going to test life without the meds. antidepressant. And so I decided to wait for my parents to leave, because at the time they had already forced me to go back to the apartment because I was unable to live by myself. And so yeah, I just stopped it abruptly, went to I don't know how many milligrams, to zero, from one day to another. And it is probably the darkest place I have ever been in my life, the 72 hours after that moment.
And so then that's when you said you got suicidal thoughts at that point,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and what kept you from taking the step? Your family, your
Yeah,
loved ones.
so basically it's first of all, I don't have a tendency to suicide.
Yes.
I don't have any bad idea about it. Everybody takes care of his own life as he wants, and I will not judge anyone who did that. But to me, it never occurred in my life. It has never been a solution. And it's like your brain is like harassing you over day and night during 70 hours, showing you permanently um, how to finish your life, how to kill yourself.
Mm.
And I was very, very close to the point of doing it.
Yes.
And I was pretty convinced it would have been a very good solution. But I had only one problem, is that I had absolutely no idea how to do it without leaving a massive scar in my family. So it just came down to 5% who are my blood in my family. All the rest, I had absolutely no problem with it.
Thanks for sharing that. So now looking back, right, it's 2024, and you said that you're completely over what's happened to you. You're not on
Absolutely.
medication anymore. What advice would you give someone who's going through the early stages of it? Like we have discussed what signs you know at that point you didn't notice, but now if you could just tell us what some of those signs and symptoms were which you wished you had noticed at the earlier stages.
The easiest symptom probably to identify is the acceleration of ideas. And this means you're going to talk a little more, you're going to produce a little more, you're going to sleep a little less, and you're probably going to experience also a change in your humor. So you're going to feel more touchy, whereas usually you're not. But it's very subtle at the beginning, so it's extremely difficult to identify the signs. And yet there are many moments in your life, since it's keep going up and down, that you're going to be having a little bit more energy than usual.
Yes.
But you need to pay attention when it starts building up over time.
Yeah,
And
when it's consistent.
sleep is absolutely 100% necessary. And this is something that needs to be taken care of. Like, we need to sleep. Some people need to sleep 12 hours. Some people need to sleep 8. I need to sleep 6. But if you start going out of your sleeping routine, you're going to put your brain in danger.
Okay. So these are two important things. One is brain
I think
activity
so.
and one is sleep. And
Yes.
can you just tell the audience that how you're doing today and how your life is different? Is it like before you went through all of this in say 2016 or 17, or do you feel you've come out stronger and life is way better now? How is it?
I've come up much stronger. Obviously, I think I'm 100% sure. Actually, I'm much stronger. I've gone back to my natural vibration of being a very energetic person, of needing to talk a lot to people and to do a lot of things and to be very active in my life. But I also have now in my bag this experience that will allow me, if I meet people who have psychiatric or psychological trouble, to be able to identify them and to react accordingly.
Okay, so how would you describe your life to be at this point, given it career-wise and your day-to-day life?
Well, I'm extremely well at the moment. I'm working in a company with people I'm very proud to work with, who are respecting me and teaching me, many stuff. So that's professionally wise. Personally wise, I just bought a house in north of France. It's the first time I'm buying a house, so I'm very happy about it. I'm doing a lot of sport. I'm seeing a lot of friends. I have a very active life, and I would have liked to say back on tracks, but it's actually much better than the tracks I was on 4 years ago.
Okay. And so as we were discussing earlier, what advice would you give people going through, a situation that you've been through? And in your case, it was that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So,
Absolutely.
what's your take on that?
So first of all, listen to yourself. It seems a bit basic, but it's quite important. Seek help, not necessarily from a doctor, but you can seek help from your friends, you can seek help from your parents, from your family. Talk about it. It's important. People can't know that you need help if you don't ask help. And then if you go to see a doctor, listen to the doctor. He is a professional. If he's giving you meds, there is a reason for that. If you want to know why, you can ask him. It's their job. They're going to do it well. And if you're being given meds, take them as you're being asked. You're not the professional. If you're being asked to take the meds once, twice a day at particular hours, just do it. Don't stop taking them because you think you're going to feel better without it. It's taking a lot of risks. Keep in mind that people get out of it, and you can, and you might be stronger after you do.
Okay. And also for the people, like you did mention that it's not always the case where there's a happy ending. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's difficult to say because I think every psychiatrical disease, if we can say these words, are different. First of all, because science knows a little bit about it, but we don't understand every of it. The proof being that we don't cure it, we just hide the symptoms so that the people can actually evolve in the society. But don't lose faith. Don't lose faith. And same advice, if you're seeing a doctor, it's his job. Let him do his job. Take the meds as you're being asked and follow the treatment. And there are many different ways that are not necessary meds that can also help you on your journey.
Can you recommend some of these other ways apart from meds, or maybe after the medication is over?
It's very difficult because I was asked by the doctors, for example, not to meditate during the first few months. But you have, I'm thinking, shamanism, meditation, just being coached by someone who is not a doctor, just speaking with someone on a long period of time is going to just make you able to get out of your trouble, talk about it, and eventually heal from it.
Okay. Thank you. This was a very insightful session, and I'm really grateful that you shared your experience with me because it is very traumatic and difficult. When I
Absolutely.
went through your article, I was going through it at night, and I was really, shocked and sad to see what you've gone through. And I know in between those years, I did reach out to you, you did message, and I had no idea, one or two lines, but I had no idea at that point that what you have gone through. And it's important for people to know that it's not always evident what their friends or family or people they see on social media are going through. And so I'm really glad that you have brought this to light, and I hope many other people also, learn from what you've gone through and it helps other people.
So do I. Thank you very much for this moment.
Thank you. In conclusion, I asked him what advice he would have given to his past self if he could have foreseen this situation. To which he replied, and let me read this out. He says, "Nothing. Keep seeking the limits. Do it with the same energy and drop any company or person that is unable to respect you as a human being." I am sure his message and transparency will help many people. So please share this video to anyone you think who may be in need.